Please listen carefully.
So I'm really excited to be here. It's a rare occasion that I get to be in front of a room of such creative and nonlinear thinkers. So I've got 7 minutes with you, and I've got all this stuff to show you, and I'm just curious. How many of you, at some point in your life, listed figure out a way to change the world on your list of aspirations for your life? I'm hoping like everybody in the room puts their hand up. So I've had that aspiration on my list for about 3 decades now. And I'm just starting to figure out what my role is in changing the world. My role is helping to support people like you actualize your goal in changing the world. And I'm beginning to accomplish this by reinventing myself as a storyteller. Like any good storyteller, I spend a lot of time engaged in research to make sure that the stories I'm telling are being true to the people and the places that they represent. By trade, I'm an exercise physiologist, and I have found that the health outcomes of individuals can serve as an incredibly interested plotline to our community's narrative. I also recognize, especially we've seen some stories in Roanoke lately, the need for caution in how those health outcomes are presented. Because we have a tendency, my slides aren't progressing, you guys. We have a tendency as a society to view data as a destiny. And that is a caution that I want to throw to the wind when I'm showing you some data today. Data is not a destiny. In fact, I prefer to view it as a catalyst for action. So if we dive a little bit deeper into some of these catalysts and take a look at health outcomes across our city, that's the slide I'm looking for. We take a look at life expectancy outcomes. Not ready for that one yet. Awesome. Thank you. Did you know that in the city of Roanoke, residents experience 6 to 14-year gaps in life expectancy as a result of where they live? Is right. So this disparity in longevity is not uncommon in cities all across the country, but it really serves as an interesting backbone to our stories, to our community's narrative. As a storyteller, I find life expectancy outcomes to be incredibly informative to us because it instantly provokes the question, why? So I want you to be thinking about why, and the first thing I want you to think about is the context of your home neighborhood. I want you to think about that context and how it might engender disparities like these. I want you to think about your social support networks, and I want you to think about the quality and availability of infrastructure that supports healthy living, healthy eating, and stability. Next, I want you to think about what this context might look like in other neighborhoods across the community. Does that picture appear equitable? In your mind's eye, are you envisioning residents that look like you? Next, I want you to think about what it would take to reduce these disparities through more equitable neighborhood development. Do you think you have what it takes to facilitate that change? Do you think you know what's best for the residents in those neighborhoods? As placemakers, it's incredibly important for us to grapple with questions like these because our positions in society give us power enough to facilitate change. But as a storyteller, I feel a responsibility to encourage my listeners to consider who the protagonist in that story should be. Should it be you? Or should it be the people who live in those neighborhoods facing the very disparities we're trying to minimize? So I've got about 3 minutes with you, so for the sake of time, my vote is on the residents. So to leverage this belief, I began my life as a storyteller in 2010 through the development of a community surveillance system called the Roanoke Valley Community Healthy Living Index. This platform allows for the gathering of health outcomes all across the city of Roanoke so we can get a better sense of access to healthy living across our diverse neighborhoods in terms of perceptions of access, but also in terms of specific health outcomes. This is important, and it focuses primarily on the health status of elementary school children, but it allows families across the city to directly impact the changes their neighborhoods experience, because it positions government officials, social service providers, and people like you and I to make resident-informed decisions about really complex problems in our city. At the most basic level, as you can see, the Community Healthy Living Index allows for the visual representation of health outcomes across the neighborhood. So this gives us a better chance of understanding where the greatest disparities in our city lie. And here the darker color that you see indicates higher prevalence rates of a particular indicator. Right now you're looking at underweight, healthy weight, and overweight and obesity across our city's youth. This data set allows community partners to better understand the extent of disparities that our children face, but also how those disparities change over time. What makes this data set particularly unique, though, is the ability to collate those health outcomes with each family's perceptions of access to healthy living resources in their home neighborhood. So let's take another close look at that life expectancy data. We're looking at two of the most disparate neighborhoods in terms of life expectancy, and I want you to notice how significant the differences in childhood obesity are in these neighborhoods. This data also allows us to understand differences in perceptions of levels of access to parks and recreational facilities. And we can get a better sense and understanding of how people perceive their level of access to healthy foods in close proximity to the home. What we found is perhaps most important is we're also gathering information on family perceptions of safety in their neighborhood. And I say this is perhaps most important because this data set has allowed us to understand that perceptions of neighborhood safety are the most significant predictor of obesity in the city of Roanoke. So if we take a deeper dive into this particular indicator, we also ask families to describe the types of barriers to active living that they perceive in their neighborhood. And I'm hoping you can see some of this data, but too many hills shows up as a significant barrier in one neighborhood, whereas crime is very prevalent in the other. What makes this so helpful to us is we also ask families to provide suggestions on how to remediate those barriers. So as you can imagine, this information serves as an incredibly important platform for a number of initiatives across the city because it provides concrete evidence of the types of changes our residents would like to see in their neighborhood. It also provides concrete evidence of the need for cross-sector collaboration. Now, I recognize fully that my role in community development is minimal. But in the last 2 years, because of cross-sector partners like you, the stories that I've told from this data have resulted in more than $600,000 in resources for our city and have initiated and facilitated half a dozen infrastructure improvement projects guided by the residents in our neighborhoods. This resident-guided approach is causing Roanoke to become a model city in the United States for how we do resident engagement. Most notable is our recent award from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to support the Invest Health initiative. Invest Health is a cross-sector partnership that is using resident voices to guide project development to make more equitable communities and is highly focused on Northwest right now. But I can see that my time is already up, so I need to go. But as I prepare to leave you this morning, I encourage you to consider one more thing. That in your role as a placemaker, as you move forth to change the world, I want you to consider who the protagonists are in the stories that you're telling. And if this data can help you on your way, please let me know. It serves as a critical first step in resident-guided community development. I thank you guys and hope you have an exciting expo.